the shield of Judah, which is basically the shield of the Jews. So that's what this final I think this will be the final chapter. So we're going to talk business. We're going to talk obviously about Iran. Tomorrow we're going to talk more about eschatology. You won't understand what's going on until you realize that America and Israel and the West is in a end times eschatological. There we go. So I picked a little sound garden for our backdrop today. We're gonna do some social media stuff. Okay, I'm having a little bit of Wi-Fi problem. Back in San Diego, got a little sun yesterday. So the shield of Judah. You have to get rid of all your ideas about like there's America, there's Israel, there's Germany, there's Russia. That doesn't apply to anything. We are dealing with the esoteric. We're dealing with a whole different world. And let's get into just a little bit of there's not a lot of good headlines. My new favorite person on earth is this guy on Substack called, it's a great name, Shanaka Anselm Pereira. I love it. Shanaka. Yeah, we're going to do that. We're going to do his piece. So we're going to do a little bit of business, a little bit of the stuff that I should have done last night, but I got too much sun and a little too much, a little bit of jet lag and so forth. So I'm just going to sort of ramble about a number of things that I wanted to do last night concerning the economy. But then we woke up to, there's not really a lot of headlines, is there? There's missiles going this way, and there's missiles going that way. There's, it's sort of strange that Iran has hit 5 or 6 other nations in the area, but not very strongly. Not very strongly. It's sort of like a warning shot, warning across the bow, Bahrain and so forth. I think there's been some activity in Iraq, UAE, Dubai, etc. Now, just to be clear, let me be very clear. We're not going to invade Iran. That's just not going to happen. And understand that like Alex Karp told us that this was coming, right? This is the new kind of warfare. It's all technology. It's all missiles. We can find you and we can strike you. And it applies to the United States too. There's no reason to believe that like Palantir, this kind of warfare applies to U.S. soil too, right? Palantir was used in Minneapolis. Palantir is being used in Iran. It's all the same thing, right? So it's the shield of Judah. Now, if you followed me for a while, I did quite a bit of work in reference Josephus's, the book by Josephus called the Bellum Judaicum, which means the Jewish Wars. And I think when you wake up and we're attacking Iran and they call it the shield of Judah, we can finally admit that the war on terror is a Jewish war. I don't even really say it with any venom. I just think it's the Yunnan plan. I mean, it is what it is. And you can't understand it otherwise, right? There's an FBI document that says that Trump is compromised by Israel and his handler is Jared Kushner. That's an FBI document. It's not some wacky anti-Semitic conspiracy theory. It's an FBI document. Now, last week we did some work, and this week I continued it of using the book of this. I know this sounds completely crazy, but you're just gonna have to this is where we are. Using the book of Revelation as sort of the strategic textbook of what's going on. And you could say, really? Well, because you believe that like that's how the world works? If the shoe fits, right? For example, we'll get into this more tomorrow. Just 2 things real quick. Just keep your eye on this, that the book of Revelation says that Um, Trump will. Sorry about that. Um, if this is the prediction that Trump will rule, his office will be in place for 42 months. So if he, for whatever reason, checks out 6 months before his term is done, you can tell that the playbook is the Book of Revelation. I know that. I know. I know. I know. Look, I didn't make the world this way. This isn't my inclination to talk about shit that's crazy, but there's 15 million people on Earth trying to take control of the world that has 8 billion people in it. So, so 42 months of reigns for 42 months. For whatever, they take him out, he's impeached, he falls down the steps, whatever. You know that they're playing that. That's how they're playing this out. Okay. Now, the other thing you got to keep in mind is things like the Dome of the Rock. Right. They want to rebuild the temple. So the first thing they have to do to rebuild it is they have to do, and that would be what do they call it? Uh, what is it? I'll do it tomorrow. But there's some Book of Revelation, something of desolation, the something of desolation, which is like a massive ultimate attack on not on God, but on one of God's temples. That's in the Book of Revelation, and of course that would be the Al-Aqsa Mosque, also known as the Dome of the Rock. So these are the things that we have to talk about tomorrow. But today we're going to do some business, because we were supposed to do all business today, and instead we have a war, and I wasn't able to do the nationalists last night. So we're going to just do it all together, and then we'll answer some questions and so forth. So this is really important, people, because Jim Cramer even had to comment on this. So this is how this went down. I think it was Wednesday. On Substack, this essay by Citrini Research. Where'd it go? I found this article about this explanation that AI and the investment into AI, I'm just going to use the word deflation, that all the spending will eventually wind down, take away. We've talked about this before. Not only take away the little bit of GDP growth that we had in 2025, which is all based on the AI spending, data centers, so forth, but that the knock-on effect will be the liquidation of all these tech jobs. We've already talked about this. I did a piece right before the election, right around the election, and there was all this talk about AI, and I did a piece on TikTok called Trump Eats Tech. And the idea was, like, here in California or in Austin, in my lifetime, like, what we did, we replaced like our industrial capacity with like technology, right? Like General Electric sort of liquidated everything. We don't really compete industrially with China. They make more than 10 times more steel than we do, for example. But we have this thing called tech, and we control it. We control the internet. We have 50, $60 trillion. We have half of the world's stock market because of tech. So then AI comes along and can write code. I remember before I even knew what AI was, I remember watching Schmidt, the former CEO of Google, say that within a year or two, you'll just go to an AI agent and tell it to build something like you'd tell software engineers. And I'm not a tech guy, so I didn't really understand how this works. But here we are 18 months into it, and we can see that we wake up almost every week and AI is just ripping the ass out of the tech industry everywhere you look. So I even posted on a note on here, the cash flow, this is from the Financial Times, the cash flow of all of the Magnificent Seven are rolling over and going deeply negative. All the cash. This was I didn't even know what I was saying. I just said, Trump really is going to do this big AI thing. It's going to there's going to be all these layoffs up and down the West Coast, and all these people making $150,000 won't have any place to work, and blah blah blah. So the Citrini research thing spells that out in spades what that would look like over the next 3 to 5 years. It sounds a lot like the fourth turning. That just like a wave, like a mile behind me is the Pacific Ocean, that the inflation that came out of 2008, and just to do the crude math, remember the balance sheet of the Federal Reserve went from 700 billion to 7 trillion. So the real inflation coming out of the great financial crisis was 10x. You could also do it based on debt, because money comes from debt. So I always like to do it whenever I do content on here. I always say when the 9/11, we had $3 trillion in debt. Now we have $39 trillion in debt. But let's just use the Fed's balance sheet as our inflation thing. So we 10x'd the money, which then had to go somewhere. It could go into gold. It could go into tech stocks. It could go into real estate. And primarily in the United States, it went into stocks, primarily tech stocks, and the NASDAQ. Now, if you look at the graph of the NASDAQ, it looks like this. It's literally vertical. Like on your iPhone, if you just go and hit the little thing on the NASDAQ, it goes from like this corner to this corner. So all that inflation from 2008, rich people like to get on television and say the reason we have inflation is because Joe Biden sent everybody $1,200. But really what happened is we sent a check to the billionaires and the richest people in the country. We've sent a 10x check to. Follow me? So now here we are. The problem is if all this tech is going to remove jobs from the country, you're going to have an effect. It's just like watching a wave come in where you just have this swell, right? And it's moving. Do you ever think about like what is a wave? Like you sort of talk about it like the water's moving, but the water's not moving, right? It's something in the water that's moving. It's weird. It's the whole like particle duality thing, wave particle duality. Anyways, so all this inflation's coming. It's gone into the NASDAQ, and now the NASDAQ is going to self-destruct in some way, shape, or form. Now, they may print another wave of $10 trillion, or this is very important because I'll be talking more about this. The thing is coming, the tokenization is coming this year in June. And it's not going to be called tokenization. It's not going to be called digital assets. It's going to be called alts, alternatives. It's coming in June. And everything that Bruno's told you for 5 years is coming in June. The whole schlaboodle is going to be tokenized. The stocks, the bonds, the mutual funds, the T-bills, everything is going to be tokenized. And it'll sort of be announced about June of this year. Okay. But anyways, back to this article, which was here, and then I just lost it. Let's see if we can find it again. And there's 3 articles that I'm going to reference today, and you will find all 3 articles, and you will read them, even if you just scan them. You will read these 3 articles because they're that important. I don't talk like this very often. I'm sort of being facetious. Give me just a second. Okay. It's called the 2028 Global Intelligence Crisis by Citrini Research. Now, let me get back to my original story. I was reading the article, and my friend here in San Diego, 20 minutes into the article, sent me the article. Hold on, listen to this story. Because her daughter, who works on Wall Street, was sent the article by the person that she says is the smartest guy in the office for the world's biggest wealth manager based in Switzerland. So somehow this fucking thing got totally viral in New York. Like, think about it. It went through the biggest, from the head research guy who reads everything. He's a relatively young guy. I don't know his name or anything. I just heard the story. Sent it to his friends, who sent it to her mom in San Diego, who thought it was impactful enough to send it to me in Pennsylvania at the time. While I'm reading the article, and then that night, Jim Cramer, that's not going to be that bad, it's so let's just calm down for a minute. The fact that you can see what Jim Cramer is now, you can see what all of these people are, right? They're all like, they're not journalists. They're like Pharisees. Tucker Carlson, Jim Cramer, Candace Owens, MSNBC, Richard Hott, the whole thing is controlled opposition, right? Because here's this thing much now. Do you remember what happened in 2008 that almost triggered the crisis? When Jim Cramer went nuts and went, they know nothing, right? I was a stockbroker at the time, and I actually really believe that that did something. The psychological impact of watching him have almost a breakdown on television, you could never talk it down after that. In other words, I'd be talking to people on the phone and I'd be like, yeah, there's issues with mortgages and so forth. And after Jim Cramer did that, I never had to explain it to anybody. They could just hear in his voice. Remember how he said it? He said, the head of these firms are calling me at night, and Bill Poole and Ben Bernanke know nothing. Was Ben Bernanke even the sixth guy then? Yeah, I remember him going on about Bill Poole. Who's Bill Poole, the Treasury Secretary? I can't even remember. But that was the trigger of like a $600 billion problem, as this Citriani piece lays out. Now we're talking about something that isn't, you know, a couple percent of GDP. We're talking about something, the stock market is over 200% of GDP. And 40% of that is the Magnificent Seven. I'm not even making any predictions that the thing's going to go down. I'm just telling you that this wave is so massive. It's biblical. I mean, that's why we're doing. I mean, I can't even believe that I wake up in the morning. Sometimes I go like, do you really do like Gog and Magog shit? Like, you're going to scare people away. And then you wake up to us attacking Iran. It's called the Shield of Judah. And a piece by Citrini Research goes absolutely viral. So viral. I mean, it's an obscure. I've never even heard of this group before. How did this thing get on Jim Cramer? And it's just all like controlling the narrative. Oh, there's going to be a slowdown. Everything's going to be okay. Don't really worry about it. So you're going to read this yourself. It's called The 2028 Global Intelligence Crisis, a thought exercise in financial history from the future. It is an extremely well written, well thought out piece. And you can already tell it's absolutely brilliant. The way this lays out a kind of, in a simplistic way, I would say that if we had all this inflation coming out of 2008, they have to constantly inflate the inflation. They can't ever let the wave break, right? When you think about what a wave is, it's just the bottom gets slowed down by the sand and then the thing stands itself up and then falls over. And whether the slowing down is going to be AI or the Iran war or the price of oil, nobody ever really knows, right? If you go to the book Tomorrow's Gold by Mark Faber, it's one of the most important financial books that you'll ever read, and no one talks about it because people don't like what it says. But his daughter made a bowl. When you open the four leaf or the inseam or whatever it's called, the on the cover, there's this picture of this bowl, like a Greek wine bowl like this, and it's being held up by elephants. And the idea is that most financial people talk to you as though the bowl is rational and predictable. Mark Faber's point, which I think is much more profound, is we never really know where the water's going to go or what the elephants are going to do. It's actually mathematically, it's a much, 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 much more sophisticated idea than anything it's also completely explained in a book called The Misbehavior of Markets. These are these big elephants sort of dancing around with this bowl, and you never know where the water's going to go. So even with all the bullshit that I'm going to give you today from these three articles, I don't know what's going to happen either. I think by this June, we are going to have such a complex financial situation with the biggest tech companies rolling over, all the people from Seattle to San Diego making $180,000 writing code just got laid off. How that will impact the real estate. It's just trillions and trillions and trillions and trillions and trillions and trillions that nobody understands. And this is why the Mark Faubers and Jim Rogers of the world, who I always reference, in 2008 said, Mark Faber said, you know what we should have done in 2008? We should have raised interest rates. And people go like, what? Yeah. In other words, just burn it all off all at one time. In other words, just take the hit. And same thing, Jim Rogers. I've said this, I've made content with this for 5 years. I can hear his voice with his little bit of Arkansas in his voice say, I think it was to Becky Quick on CNBC. Jim Rogers, he was like 70 at the time, 70 or 75 or something. He's like, Becky, this has never worked anywhere it's been tried. I mean, quantitative easing and all this money printing. It's just going to blow into asset prices. And like Thomas Jefferson, our kids won't be able to afford houses. They won't be able to afford stocks. In other words, the cash flow. This is why they created the Trump accounts. They're desperate to find more money to blow to because this thing is starting to stand up like a wave down behind me in Del Mar Beach. Now, this is a long article, by the way, so I really can't. I'm not going to even start reading it. Here's what if you find this thing, you're on the right track. That's what the headline looks like. Okay, you should get this, skim it, send it to your friends and family, send it to everybody, because the reason. I think the reason it made such an impact on people because it's a narrative that's almost like reading the script to like a Netflix series like Ozark or something. It's not just financial psychobabble. It's not just the same shit you hear on CNBC and Bloomberg all day. The Fed's data dependent, blah, blah, blah. That same babble all day that's to make you think that they're in control of this thing. They're not in control of it. Okay? Thank you there, Sam Altman. We'll get to that. It's not 110 million, dude. It's 110 billion. Yeah, it's okay. I'm just going to try to hit some headlines just to pique your curiosity, and you'll probably go do it yourself. In every way, AI was exceeding. What it does is it starts with it goes like this. The euphoria was palpable. The October of 2026, which of course is 6 months from now, the S&P flirted with 8,000. The NASDAQ broke 30K. The initial wave of layoffs due to human obsolescence began in early 2026. And then it did exactly what layoffs are supposed to do. Margins expanded, earnings beat, stocks rallied, record-setting corporate profits were funneled right back into AI compute. That's a pretty good paragraph, isn't it? I mean, that you can almost just stop right there and go, holy shit. Because this is why the NASDAQ looks like this. And the thing that how do I want to say it? The thing that made this is going to eat this. So it is like the wave down in Del Mar Beach. Follow me? In every way, AI was exceeding expectations, and the market was AI. The only problem, the economy was not. This is really good writing. I mean, this is fucking spectacular stuff. I'll just probably read like one or two more paragraphs, then we're going to go on to the next piece. It should have been clear all along that a single GPU cluster in North Dakota generating the output previously of 10,000 white-collar workers in Midtown Manhattan is more economic pandemic than economic panacea. The velocity of money flatlined. The human-centric consumer economy, 70% of GDP at the time, withered. We probably could have figured this out sooner if we had just asked how much money machines spend on discretionary goods. The hint? Zero. AI capabilities improved. Companies needed fewer workers. White-collar layoffs increased. Displaced workers spent less. Margin pressure pushed firms to invest more in AI, and AI capabilities improved. The human intelligence displacement spiral. White-collar workers saw their earnings power and rationally their spending structurally impaired. Their income went from the bedrock of the $13 trillion mortgage market, forcing underwriters to reassess whether prime mortgages are still money good. This goes on like this for page after page after page after page. It really, don't throw this word out very much, but it really is, um, it's really laying out a kind of scenario that sounds sort of like a 21st version of the Depression. Meaning most people don't really know what the Depression was. They think the stock market fell and that caused the Depression. Not really. What actually happened is the stock market falling so hard took down so much credit. There was so much margin debt. And when that came down and the banks came down and there was no FDIC insurance, you can go read the book, The Great Crash of 1929. It's about this thick. You can read it in one sitting. It's the absolute must read. Everybody has to read that book. It's by John Kenneth Galbraith, who's JFK's ambassador to India, by the way. And he was also in charge of the war board that set prices during World War II, John Kenneth Galbraith. So we have like a depression like kind of thing playing out in this essay. Let me see if I can get to the bottom. By the way, there is related. When I'm done with this, I'll jump over Zero Hedge and just read a couple of headlines to you, because we all talk about the stock market because it's sort of like talking about football or something. It's easy. You can say the Dow's at 50,000. It's not really how the economy works. The economy really works based on credit, based on debt. And when you see things happen in the debt markets, it's sort of like, did you ever hear that thing about tactics are for amateurs and strategy? How's it go? Something about warfare, about it's not about tactics, it's about logistics. It's about like getting the guys and the stuff delivered to the right place at the right time. That's really how our economy works. It's about credit. It's about debt. And I'll get to that in a second. For the entirety of modern, this is still the same piece. For the entirety of modern economic history, human intelligence has been scarce input. Capital was abundant, or at least replicable. Natural resources were finite but substitutable. Technology improved slowly enough that humans could adapt. Intelligence, the ability to analyze, decide, create, persuade, and coordinate, was the thing that could not be replicated at scale. We are now experiencing the unwind of that premium. Machine intelligence is now a competent and rapidly improving substitute for human intelligence across a growing range of tasks. This is fucking spectacular writing. That's why it went viral. It just is laid out so well. The other thing that I'd like to say at this moment is, are we not transitioning from cable TV, Jim Cramer world, to this? We went to like TikTok for 4 or 5 years, and then that was bought out by Death Star. And now, so we've jumped over. It'll be interesting to see how long Substack lasts, because they'll probably just at some point just squeal anti-Semitism, and that the whole thing will have to be like taken down or something. But for right now, what it's doing is it's making, I mean, this kind of research, we didn't even have this in 2008. No Wall Street firm would be allowed to publish that. You'd be instantly fired if you created that in 2008. Like, I have personal experience of that. For example, like I called our banking guy in our office and I said, this weekend I read the Citigroup, the big bank company, of course. I read their annual report. It doesn't tell you anything. I said this to a bank analyst, and you know what his answer was? Yeah, that's the worry. In other words, we have no fucking idea what's going on in Wall Street. Like, Goldman Sachs had 2% equity on its balance sheet in 2008. My point is, there is a point here, that these new Web3 social media things are snowballing and becoming a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? If the world believes that silver is $100 an ounce, it's $100 an ounce. If it believes that the Dow is at 50,000, it's at 50,000. And if the world believes that we're going to go into a kind of AI-induced, I mean, if you really understand depression and all of its horror, it's almost an amazing thing to think about. Like in Pittsburgh, I'm from the Pittsburgh area. The peak unemployment rate at some point was, I think, 36% of the population of Pittsburgh was unemployed. But the weird part is that you could see the steel mills and they weren't operating. They were operating at like 50% of capacity, but the steel mills were there and the workers were there and they didn't get called into the steel mill. Now we don't have the steel mills. Follow me? And what this is laying out is like the human intelligence is like the steel mills, and the tech created the human intelligence and then like sort of took it away and replaced it with machine intelligence. And what the fuck are we going to do if this plays out? Is Trump going to I mean, you remember he was in the White House and with Zuckerberg and everybody and was talking about the $22 trillion. Well, the $22 trillion doesn't exist. Then in the State of the Union, talked about the $18 trillion. Nobody knows what the fuck that is either. There's no, if you ever heard, remember like from physics class or whatever, they said if you were like sitting in the ocean in a canoe and a tsunami went underneath you, you'd just go like this. You wouldn't even know it. You would just lift but it's the energy that's in the wave that's so destructive. And that's sort of what this is laying out. Now let's jump over to Zero Hedge for a minute. I think I pay $35 a month for the premium, and it's worth it. Now, so I've been giving you all this wave talk and a little bit of flirting with like depression kind of ideas. Just calm down. I'm not really trying to say, look, we're going into a depression. What I'm trying to say is like, you're just dealing with forces here that we don't really understand. I haven't even been talking about Iran yet, but let's all calm down. All right. So NVIDIA has this fucking enormous quarter. And here's the headline. On Zero Hedge, NVIDIA stock is back to flat, erasing all of its post-earnings gains after what some attribute as a lackluster conference call. By the way, NVIDIA is the economy. That spending going into NVIDIA not only lifts the stock market, creates the wealth effect so the rich people in San Diego can buy, avocado toast in their Tesla and, live their lifestyle. Because that's how the economy works. Like the economy doesn't drive the stock market. The stock market drives the economy. Very few people will ever. That's why. Why is this not logged in? I'm going to give it a shot. Let's do this one instead. But the real action, people. So if NVIDIA comes out and blows the lid off things and the stock goes nowhere, it means everything's changed. It means the psychology of the stock market is different. In other words, good news is a good opportunity to sell. So the headline is, oh, good. It logged in. Good. Private. This is a premium article. I always say that. I always, in case they get mad at me and tell me to stop taking their stuff and reading it on, I will happily do that. In the meantime, I'll give them a shout out and say it's very much worth your while to pay $35 to Zero Hedge so you can read these articles. A headline is Private Credit Rocked by UBS. That's the biggest wealth management firm in the world. And it's where I got this Trione research. Shock outlook. Quote, record cascading defaults and widespread contagion. There it is, folks. That right there. That is whenever you start to see that wave go like this, just start to lift. AI-driven disruption to leverage technology and business services models with potential spillovers into leveraged loans. Now, this is sometimes called the shadow banking system. Like it's the credit behind the normal forms of credit. Something like 15% of all corporate bonds, like if you went to a bond mutual fund, like the Bond Fund of America managed by Capital Research up in Los Angeles, the whole corporate bond market in America, the investment grade, it's triple B, and 15% of that is related to AI. So there's sort of like, kind of, maybe not really kind of, but sort of like the subprime market. But here's the key. Here's the key part. Like, even if you're a layperson, to think about. So in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, of all places, they were building a Blue Owl, is a business development corporation. It's sort of like a mutual fund. It's kind of called private credit. And they refused to fund and finish a project in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, a big data center. So think about this. Just the fact that the credit is being pulled out of the economic activity, that's the beginning. Follow me? As soon as somebody pulls back, it's literally the tide going out, to keep using ocean references, right? I mean, listen to this. Here are the key points. First, in a tail scenario, assuming contagion impacts not modeled in the previous UBS note, we anticipate U.S. high yield, leveraged loans, and PC. I don't know. It's another kind of, what's private credit. Sorry. High yield, leveraged loans, private credit defaults could rise to 3 to 6% defaults, 8 to 10, and 14 to 15%, respectively. Get this. Across these markets, defaults and losses would approach 420 billion. That's as big as subprime. Subprime thing was about 600 billion. Second, in the extreme case, regression analysis suggests U.S. investment grade, high yield, and leveraged loan spreads, that's the interest rate over the treasury rate, could go from 160 to 5, 6, or 800 basis points, respectively. In other words, I forget what treasury rates are, what, like 3.5%. So what it would mean is things that everybody thought was safe and, paying like 6% would suddenly jump to like credit card like interest rates of like 12, 13%, which means they all go bankrupt. Private credit and leveraged loan issuance could decline by 50 to 75%. That's the bottom of the wave scraping on the sand and slowing down so that the thing falls over. In other words, OpenAI can't even do OpenAI if there's not enough money to build the OpenAI. Follow me? We won't even get into the energy thing. This is just the credit. Lastly, financials will be impacted through several channels. This isn't conspiracy theory, people. This is UBS, the biggest wealth manager in the world. NFBI loans. I don't know if I know what that means. Currently at 2.5 trillion, including all undrawn commitments. In a tail scenario, UBS estimates 1.6 to 1.8 trillion in total drawn exposures, of which 30 to 40% is to private equity, credit, BDCs, special purpose vehicles, collateralized loan obligations. This is like debt sausage. Remember, we had mortgage sausage in 2008. This is like AI related debt sausage. Okay. And the other headline is, they have a link to it, so I'm just going to touch it and go there because I saw it this morning on Zero Hedge. Just called. So Blue Owl, the canary in the coal mine just froze. Here's what is really happening at Blue Owl. So they have no more redemptions of Blue Owl anymore. See how this works? Like, they stop funding, they stop sending. In other words, they stop building data centers. They can't get any more credit. Blue Owl can't get any more money the same way the Lehman Brothers can't get any more money to process any more mortgages. See how this works? It's pretty easy. So they don't build a data center. So OpenAI or whoever the fuck was going to get the data center doesn't get the data center. Okay. Then the people who invested their money in Blue Owl don't get their money back. So they're not putting any more money in, right? This is why everything is basically whenever this happens, it's a form of like a run on a bank. People show up at the bank and the door's locked and they go like this, "Where's my money?" That's what's happened. Blue Owl and in the private credit markets for AI related stuff. Um, the other headline here is the headline is "All Hell Breaks Loose in Private Credit." I'm just going to read this without any like. We thought the Blue Owl recent unprecedented gating, in other words, locking the doors, of its biggest retail focused private credit fund would mark peak chaos for the $1.8 trillion industry for at least a few weeks. We were, in bold letters, very wrong. The biggest news of the week is that the private credit crisis has now jumped across the Atlantic. And as we reported overnight, UK private credit lender Market Financial Solutions, which specializes in housing bridging loans, which is a mutant melange of all the worst traits of both last year's private credit and implosion superstars, collapsed virtually overnight, having previously attracted backing from such firms as Barclays, Apollo, and Jeffries after its participation in the first brand's bankruptcy and TPG. This was the latest crisis to hit both banks and direct lenders and put a fresh spotlight on asset-based financing, although it's not like the spotlight has been off of it. The underlying collateral had been rehypothecated multiple times with different creditors, classic credit crisis problem. To put it bluntly, having only £230 million against $1.2 billion in debt is catastrophic. Again, that's like the leverage that was in the stock market in the late 1920s. You could buy $100 worth of stock with 10 cents or $10, you know what I mean? So then a large credit fund managed by PE giant KKR tumbled on Thursday after reporting a jump in troubled loans and lower investment. Now, rich people in La Jolla are reading this morning, and they're calling their investment advisors of all shapes and sizes and saying, whatever you do, don't put any more fucking money in anything related to any sort of credit related to AI. See how this works? It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. I like to think of it like this, like if you've watched those movies about 2008, literally a guy went into Lehman Brothers one morning and picked up the phone to borrow money overnight from other banks, and nobody took his call. And that was the end of Lehman Brothers. That's how it goes down. It's a sort of a Mickey Mouse way to think of it, but all right, you get the idea there. Now we're going to go on to, okay, so we did Citrini. We did some zero hedge stuff in the private credit. What was the other thing? We did, oh my God, you've got to get this fucking article from this guy on, hopefully I'm logged in. He's also doing really good stuff. I can't read it right now because I'm logged in. There's a guy on Substack called Shanaka, just like it sounds, Anselm Pereira. Okay. He did a piece. If you subscribe, I think you can hit the button and it'll read it to you about Microsoft. It's the best piece of financial journalism I've ever read. I think I've read it 3 times. I read it, I skimmed it, and I listened to it on the plane flying to San Diego. And my first thing to say about Microsoft is it is just massively profitable. Like it's hurts your brain to think about like, you mean like they have like $10 billion a month goes in the checking account? Yep. A month. 10,000 millions goes into the checking account. It's really like hard to, But anyways, it's sort of giving you like the Citrini thing is like this big picture narrative that's almost like a Netflix series or something. This piece by Shanaka Anselm Pereira, go get it, go listen to it, go read it, send it to your friends and family, make your kids read it. Like, I'm being a little bit facetious, but it's showing you the internal finances of this transition of the economy from really a software based economy to a hardware based economy. This is like 60 and 70% gross margins. This is 20 and 30% gross margins. This has no debt. This is all based on debt. This is self-funding. Like, Microsoft could just like go take over Greenland by themselves. You know what I'm saying? Like, they're transitioning thing. Microsoft now has $270 billion of liabilities off of its balance sheet. It's unbelievable. The whole world that we've lived with of like, well, technology just prints money. Like, it's been the whole US economy, right? Like, in our lifestyle, like if your lifetime, like coming out of the Cold War, like, okay, what are we going to do with the economy? Oh, it's tech. And it's tech and low interest rates and the stocks are going to go up. That's over, people. It's over. I don't really know how this plays out. Shanaka Anselm it's a uh, theologian from the Dark Ages, Saint Anselm Pereira. Okay, maybe I could probably pop that up if I tried real hard. Sign it in. Now, we do have to talk about Iran a little bit, but I want to do all this economic stuff. Now I'm going to tell you the future of tech. I'm going to read to you what the future of tech actually sounds like. It's not Manhattan's data centers run by OpenAI. And I used to say on here, sort of sheepishly, I used to be like, I really don't even know if like the future of technology is on the NASDAQ. In other words, is the future of Web3 and AI and blockchain and all this new shit, is it even really going to be controlled by a C Corp, a Delaware-based C Corp that trades on the NASDAQ and has an office building on the West Coast? The answer is no. So let me read to you some. This is on, it's really a crypto site called CoinDesk. And let me read, I'll hit the headlines and I'll read a little bit of it to you. I think I will. Yeah, there it is. CoinDesk looks like this. It's a crypto site. Oops. Here it is. Here's the article. Forget OpenAI and Google. New decentralized networks are putting an end to big tech's monopoly. That's it right there. Now, it's a pro crypto, pro blockchain kind of a vibe on this thing. But you'll see that this, whether I'm reading the Citrini piece or the Microsoft piece by Shanaka or this piece, it all has sort of the same theme that sounds like this. As AI infrastructure investments surge towards $300 billion in 2025 alone, fueled by mega projects like the $500 billion Stargate initiative, that's Trump's thing, and hundreds of billions of NVIDIA chips, The decentralized AI space offers a compelling alternative to big tech's centralized dominance. Now's the time to invest in it or build it. While centralized AI dominated by big tech giants like Amazon, Microsoft, and Google has driven remarkable progress, the recent shift towards agentic AI creates a unique opportunity for decentralized AI. It's why the sector is poised to become the most exciting and critical space over the next years. If you followed me for some time, I went to, it was Caltech last May, to a conference on Saturday, and the first guy stood up and said, and I think the headline was like, "The future is agentic AI." And I don't think I'd ever heard the word agentic. I literally Googled the word agentic, and now agentic is the future of technology. By the way, we have about 6 people around the country using agentic AI right now, doing underwriting on a state by state basis. Interesting. So there's 12 trillion, with a global AI market projected to grow at 35.9% CAGR. What is that? Cumulative annual growth rate through 2030. The stark valuation gap, 12 trillion for centralized AI enterprises versus 12 billion for decentralized AI, signals an unprecedented investment opportunity. Do you see what he's doing here? Like, everybody's looking at the thing that's real big, basically OpenAI. Just did a $110 billion funding round. You can go, that's a whole nother headline, on an $860 billion valuation. Like, I think they lost. I think they're losing. OpenAI right now is losing $60 billion a year. It's the biggest loss of money in human history. And they just raised $110 billion on like a $750 billion valuation. But hold on, you have to put that together with, but I just told you there's 6 people around the country using a Manus agent for $19.95 a month, doing underwriting on a state by state basis. And none of that has anything to do with anything that trades on the NASDAQ. Centralized AI, controlled by a handful of tech behemoths, commands a staggering $12 trillion in enterprise value, fueled by their dominance of 70% of the global cloud infrastructure. Yet this concentration of power comes at a cost. Stifled competition, ethical lapses. The Pentagon just demanded that Anthropic drop all of its ethics programs. Ethical lapse is a loss of agency and control for both individual and corporate users for a one-size-fits-all approach that often stifles innovation. This is what I'm telling you. The future of technology isn't even on the fucking NASDAQ. Meanwhile, decentralized AI, like Bruno dicking around with Manus and Agent Hub, valued at $12 billion, we don't have any valuation, is a nascent yet rapidly growing ecosystem. The block here, we did some good things here at Bruno for the last 5 years, and one of them was, I told you, I think we're going to wake up one day and like blockchain and AI are going to be the same thing. They actually said that. The blockchain AI market alone is projected to skyrocket from 6 billion to 50 billion from 24 to 2030, reflecting a staggering 42.4% CAGR. And I don't believe these figures will come close to the actual outcome. Who was it? The fucking head of somebody at Blackstone. Somebody from Blackstone, of all places, estimated that not the price of the coin, not Ether, not the $1,800, $200 billion market cap of ETH, but the transactional volume of Ethereum could go up 10x in 2026. That's from Blackstone. Here's the headline: privacy. This is the battle, people. This is the Palantir thing. It's my Palantir hat. So there's two kinds of agentic AI. There's these people who are starting wars and killing people all over the earth and going to spray anybody who doesn't. What did he say? It was the analysts at the hedge funds that shorted the stock that Alex Karp said should be sprayed with fentanyl-laced urine from a drone. From a drone. That's the CEO of this that wrote the book called The Technological Republic. So they just started a new war. We'll get to that in a minute. So this is the battleground. I mean, it is like Lord of the Rings, right? That's where this name comes from. There's like the big, scary Antichrist Satanist people, and then there's the decentralized people over here. It's that, it's cartoonish, but that's how this works. Nobody passed around an article published by EBS this week. It was the effect of a decentralized system to include things like Substack from a relatively small research company. And I do this thing where I get on and I talk like I go on this little rant about the things that the Franks used to throw at the Romans, like these little tomahawk things that's where the name Frank comes from. I think you pronounce it Francesca. Francesca? Yeah, I think that's where the name comes from. And there were these little like tomahawk throwing axes that weighed about a little under 2 pounds. And I guess they were just terrifying because they would flip and tumble and trip and go over your head and hit the ground and pop back up and so forth. So they were so effective that's where the word Frank and France comes from. That's actually a pretty good metaphor for what's happening with AI. You're going to be able to run a very, 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 again, we have a half a dozen people already through Bruno, DMs. Hey, nice to meet you. Yeah, we'll send you the link and you can go it started in Minnesota, just like I told everybody on Super Bowl Sunday. And then it went to here, and then I went to there, and somebody from Chicago just called me yesterday, and she's mapping out all of Chicago by itself, and this is just going to keep happening. I'm like, yeah, we'll just send you the link, and you can get started on it. You think you can afford 1995 on Manus? Yeah, I can probably do that. All right, we'll send you, and you can start doing it yourself in your own neck of the woods, as I like to say. Then what we're going to do is connect them to Agent Hub, and they're going to have their own private multi-agent AI system on their laptop, basically for free. There's no magnificent stuff, there's no big tech in any of what I just explained to you. Why do you think Facebook bought Manus? Because American AI is already behind Chinese AI. That's why they have to buy everything, right? Larry Ellison bought TikTok. Manus is bought Facebook because the Chinese are already beating us, but don't worry, we're going to war with Iran. So let's get into that. Here's something that no one talks about: compute capacity, harnessing the world's spare resources. Very few people understand that blockchain is such an effective system because it finds cheap compute in the cloud. No one talks about that. I had a friend who was a salesman for fiber optic cable back in the day, whenever it was booming, when the internet was being built. And he explained that, like, what blockchain really is? It's just utilizing all this spare capacity that's almost free. No one talks about that. Meanwhile, OpenAI is running out of money trying to build data centers and grow and grow and grow and grow and grow because the compute. Do you ever wonder why aren't race cars 10,000 horsepower instead of 1,000 horsepower? Because after a while, you build such a big engine, you can't even control the car, right? That's what's happening to OpenAI. They're building these ever bigger language models, and they're not getting any more compute out of them. They're not getting any more effective intelligence out of them. It's like trying to have a sports car that's 2,500 horsepower. You're just going to die. You're just going to blow yourself up, right? Blockchain as the backbone of trust and innovation. AI is moving to blockchains. Here's why. I mean, this is all Vitalik Buterin, people. This is like, he is the philosopher king of this whole fucking space, and nobody talks about him because he's sort of dry and sort of geeky looking. But he's been telling you that what blockchain is really going to be used for. I mean, it's really this simple. I've said this a few times on here. The antidote to this is Ethereum. This versus Ethereum. This is like the centralized will kill you and spray your kids with fentanyl piss. Over here, we have Vitalik Buterin who's like, nope, what we really need to do is preserve everybody's privacy, individuality, and agency, their human agency, not even the tech agency, but like their own personhood. By the way, this will be put on Substack. Training validation, copyright compliance, AI guardrails, value transactions, data security, and privacy. Open source, the catalyst. These are just the headlines. The catalyst for exponential growth. That, I'm going to just stop right there. The open sourceness of blockchain and agentic AI is what is killing this and OpenAI. They're trying to build a moat around something to which there is no moat. OpenAI just hired the guy who created, what was it called? Clawbot. They made 1.6 million, one weekend, Clawbot made 1.6 million individual agents, and they ran around the internet and terrorized financial institutions, 1.6 million agents operating independently. So what happened? OpenAI hired the guy. In other words, it would be like hiring the biggest white hat hacking person of all time. They don't have anything, people. The NASDAQ doesn't have anything. The Magnificent Seven doesn't have anything. Big tech doesn't have anything. Google runs the internet, and that's why superintelligent AI says that they have superintelligent AI says, quote, Google has AI by the balls. Again, this is the wave again. This is the $12 trillion centralized AI market is the mature Goliath. That's the wave coming like this. And underneath it is the decentralized part, slowing it down. It's going to topple it. I don't know how this plays out. All right, go get that article, find that article yourself. It's on CoinDesk. It's called How Decentralized AI is Leveling the Playing Field. Forget OpenAI and Google. New decentralized networks are putting an end to big tech's monopoly. It's all the same story, people. Everywhere you look, the Microsoft piece by Shakara is the same thing. Shakara? Yeah, Shakara. It's the same as the Centrini piece. It's the same as the disruption in the credit markets, like it blew out. All the same story. I'm just giving it to you from different angles. So this is usually the time I run out of things to say, and therefore put the music on for a minute. But if you've been here this long, let's now talk about what we're doing. Name that tune. Okay, the operation, it's not in America, but in Israel, is being called the Shield of Judah. It's basically the shield of the Jews. And we'll get into that more tomorrow. I'll do a piece. I'm going to relate it. If you may have heard me earlier this week, I got on Google Gemini waiting for the Trump war fighter speech. It was all blood and Trump's State of the Union was just all like total Hunger Games stuff. Anyways, I got in Google Gemini and I asked it to overlap the war on terror and the book of Revelation. And it had fun with that. And then I won't go through it again. But at the end, it said, would you like me to make an essay of this? And I almost said yes. Then I said, is doing this dangerous? It's all I said. I asked Google Gemini if trying to combine the war on terror with the book of Revelation. I just said, is this dangerous? And it said yes. And it gave 3 reasons. And the first thing it said was AI is policing itself. So the AI said, I'm watching you. So the Palantir is actually, I think if you Google it, it'll bring up an image like from Lord of the Rings. I don't even know if I've ever seen Lord of the Rings, but it's this all-seeing eye thing. It's what it is. Anyways, so we have a war, tremendous war. We looked at it very strongly. And here's the Drudge Report. See if there's anything new. It's war. U.S. and Israel launch major strike on Iran. Khomeini might be dead. Tehran hits American military bases. Explosions across the Middle East. Tel Aviv targeted. Updates. Sky Dubai hotel erupts into flames. Blah, blah, blah. The Ellisons will now run networks, studios, news. Again, this is all the same thing, isn't it? This is the centralization of everything that is now leading. A lot of us voted for Trump because he was going to keep us out of all the wars, and now we're on to the big one. The real goal of the war on terror was always Iran. That's the one country in the Middle East that can actually go toe-to-toe with Israel. Some signs that they've closed the Straits of Hormuz, not confirmed. I really don't have a lot to offer you, like from what you're seeing on television. Let's just quote this. Stephen Miller, who's a fucking asshole. Like, just look at him. This is what happened to America, people. Whenever they do the post-mortem 1,000 years from now on the United States, where did it go? There it is. Here he is. This and this are really the same thing. This is this like in technology, and this is it in human form. This is the guy that says we can do whatever we want. This is the shield of Judah. This is what the whole war on terror is. The whole fucking thing is just this. A World War III warning by Stephen Miller to young American men has resurfaced and gone viral hours after Donald Trump ordered strikes on Iran. He said in November 4th, hours before Election Day, the senior Trump advisor said on X, if young men don't want to be drafted to fight in Kamala's and Cheney's Third World War, they better get out and vote for Trump. Now, understand, if they were to draft Americans, this will just be Israelis drafting Americans to go fight their war. That's what the whole war on terror thing is now. So I don't really want to get into that too much. because it'll cause problems. But here's where we are with the war with Iran and so forth. The question is like, what does victory look like? In other words, let's say they win. Let's say like the so-called regime in Iran capitulates. It then becomes obvious that the entire Middle East has been overwhelmed by America and Israel. All the Muslim world knows that it has been conquered. Just digest that for a minute. All the regimes, Jordan, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, now Syria, run by a member of Al-Qaeda. All of the Middle East, all of the Muslim world will be in what some people are calling, you've probably heard it too, I didn't make it up, it's the first person I heard was Sheikh Imran Hussein used the word Pax Judaica. It is the shield of Judah, people. This is what the war is. My question is, what does victory look like? You may not want this victory because the obvious things that come, and I'll wind this down, the obvious things that come with a complete capitulation of Iran is China's energy supply is badly, badly damaged. 20% of the world's oil goes through the Straits of Hormuz. Then Russia also has to deal with the fact that all of the Middle East is now under the control of Israel. By the way, the vast majority of Israelis are Russian. I don't know if you knew that. That's also interesting. The second language in Israel is Russian. So, or now, let me wind down, Linda. Let me wind this down by saying I've always made the thing on here that the NASDAQ is the war. What? What are you talking about? Here, let's see if I can find a good. I don't know how to prove the. You can't see it very well with this. Okay, that's not too bad. Okay, here's the graph of the NASDAQ, right? And you can go do this on your iPhone. Go look at this. And I remember I've told this story like 100 times on here. I remember being a stockbroker and I had my uh, great uncle's TV passed away and I got like his little TV. It was sitting on this side of my desk and on this side of my desk was my Quotron as a stockbroker. And if you remember, as they were racing across the desert, remember, it was like a shock and awe blitzkrieg kind of a war. That's why it fell apart, because we only had 80,000 people in a nation of 140 million or whatever it is. But that was because it was always a decapitation strike kind of a thing, which was meant to just fuck up Iraq and then create chaos and then have ISIS come in. That's the plan of the Shield of Judea. I hope you understand that. Chaos is the preferred outcome of the war on terror. The war on terror is a war for terror. Follow me? Like there could be, Iran could become a real terrorist opportunity if the so-called regime falls. Yep. With like real scary weapons. Be careful what you wish for. But anyways, if you go look at the NASDAQ yourself, and it'll just sort of intuitively, you'll see it in the graph. The NASDAQ took off and created this bull market that we're in. Again, I'm going back to the Del Mar Beach wave thing. This wave that is the NASDAQ started with the Iraq war. Go look at the graph. And I remember looking, like literally like leaning back in my seat and looking at the TV and the 8 armored personnel carriers and the tanks sweeping across the desert to get to Baghdad. And then looking at my Quotron, and everything was up like 2.5%. Like all of the NASDAQ stocks were up 2.5% day after day. As the war goes, the NASDAQ went, and I was like, what does that have to do with that? But this is where we are, people. And so the first hour of this, I talked about finance, and now we're talking about Iran, and I'm telling you, they're the same thing. They're the psychological, literally the psychology, the zeitgeist of the market is that we have tech that no one else has. And therefore we can do whatever we want. That's why Stephen Miller gets on TV and just says, we can do whatever we want. We control the FBI. Kash Patel's fucking an Israeli girl. We can do whatever we want. There's Epstein. We eat kids. We fuck kids. We do blow up anything we want to blow up. We don't answer to anybody. And this is why tomorrow you have to, whether you like it or not, this is why tomorrow you have to listen to me talk about the book of Revelation, because these people are in a biblical, eschatological freak show of power. And it's only like stories that you've heard out of the Old Testament is what we're living through. And we actually, when I did the Google AI thing, and then I'll let you go on with your Saturday, I actually typed into Google AI, said, can you overlay, I think I said the war on terror in the book of Revelation or something like that. And it had fun with that for a minute. And then I said, could it be that, like, because there's somebody else on Substack who's arguing that the whore of Babylon, we've all heard that, like they used it during the Renaissance and so forth. And they frequently reference Rome, and then during the Reformation, they reference the Catholic Church as the new Rome, so to speak, the new whore of Babylon. But there's a guy that does some good work on Substack, and he's saying that the whore of Babylon is Jerusalem. I asked Google AI, I said, because it says in the book of Revelation that the whore of Babylon controls the seas and controls trade. Well, that has to be the United States. There's never been a nation that's controlled the seas and trade like we do. So Google Gemini wrote this big long essay. It was like, yeah, this equals this and this equals this, and Trump will rule for 42 months and like all this crazy shit. And then I got down to the bottom and I said, is this dangerous? And it said, yeah, it's dangerous. So we'll do some more dangerous stuff tomorrow. And there's really not a lot of, I don't have a lot of good, like, deep information for you about this attack on Iran. There's not going to be there's no military reality to putting boots on the ground or anything like that. I always say that if you look at the topography of Iran, it's like 100 million people in an area that looks a lot like Idaho. Like just impenetrable mountains and so forth. Persia's 4, 5, 6,000 years old, depending on who you talk to. So we'll do some crazy stuff tomorrow. And business-wise, if you just want to think about something right now, we do have about 6 people deploying these agents and locking and loading on a state-by-state basis. If you're interested in that, shoot me a DM.